everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of the Career Game Loop interview series. I'm Jessica Lindl, the author of the Career Game Loop, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Nitzan Pelman, who leads first and foremost a newly formed social organization called Climb Together, a sister organization of Climb Higher, which is the fourth organization that she has launched in her career, incredibly entrepreneurial. She'll tell us a little bit more about that in a second. And then Genevieve King, who leads quite a bit of the work at Urban Arts, which is an organization that focuses on upskilling young high school talent into either new careers or into college opportunities. So before we dive in, though, and hear more about them, I just wanted to ground us in the topic that we have today, which is really learning how to build your network when you don't have a huge amount of social capital. And social capital are those connections that you have either that you've made through yourself or through your family or your community. If you don't have the book, this is how we think about you in the center with the community that you've built. You've got these close ties of people that you spent quite a bit of time with along the way. They could turn into mentors or sponsors or strong peer advocates. We have weak ties, which Nitzan's going to bring to life for us. And then these undiscovered opportunities that we'll be hearing more about today. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. Nitzan, do you want to give us an introduction on your work, and then we'll start with you on some questions?
Thanks, Jessica, for having us here. So 7 years ago, I was an entrepreneur in residence at LinkedIn. And when I worked there, they put a referral button on their platform. And what they learned by doing that was that the vast majority of job seekers get jobs through referrals. It was really the first time in my life that I started to think about, where have I gotten my jobs from? And how has my network opened up doors for me? I'd really never thought about those questions before, and then realized pretty quickly that every job I had ever gotten had come through a relationship and a network. And I had really never even applied to any jobs before because all of them had sort of come from people I knew. And that as much as I wanted to be distinct in the world, I realized how undistinct I was and how ubiquitous this kind of hiring happened. And then I started to really look at workforce organizations. There was an incredible number of them around the country who essentially all kind of live off of the same premise. Let's teach people a skill, an in-demand skill, and then voila, like they will be ready for the workforce. And while that's true, people do need skills in order to get good middle-class jobs. The idea that that was going to happen by them applying cold without somebody vouching for them, without sort of having this network and infrastructure seemed pretty off to me, given that who you know matters almost as much as what you know. And yet many of the organizations that train our workforce kind of don't have that methodology or that thought process of networks and relationships are half of the equation. So that led me to start Climb Higher, which is a nonprofit that focuses on upskilling people with in-demand skills, but also at the same time helps them build relationships and networks and really teaches it at the most granular levels. What does it mean to nod your head in a conversation, to show that you're an active listener? How do you ask open-ended questions? How do you follow up with people? How do you write them cold notes on LinkedIn that actually are going to get them to respond to you? Things like that. We did all of that work with our climbers, which is what we called the learners in the program. What we learned very quickly is you can talk to your blue in the face about all of these skills, but if you don't practice, you will never get good at any of them. And so every month we had events where we brought professionals in and they would create cocktail parties and, answer the ubiquitous question, tell me about yourself, and figure out how to share airspace in a conversation and ask each other open-ended questions and things like that. And over time, our learners got pretty skilled at doing that. And they started to open up doors for each other as alumni of the organization. All of that made me realize that we have this unique opportunity after 6 years of deep learning about the art of social capital that we can actually now teach that and share that knowledge, that content, those insights, those strategies, curriculum, all of that with everybody else. There's no reason why we just need to hold on to it ourselves. And so I started Climb Together, which is an organization that now supports 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, and other workforce organizations on how they can embed social capital so that their learners and their students can tap into alumni networks of their institutions or in their programs so that they can unlock referrals and jobs for themselves.
One of the key things that I learned from you in our conversations around this book was the concept of a weak tie. So can you help us understand what that is?
Yeah, definitely. So weak ties is a concept that fascinates me endlessly, and one I've been obsessive about for a long time. And that is the notion that conventional wisdom would say that it's people that you know really, really well, that you've worked with for a long time. Those are the people that are going to unlock jobs and doors for us because they know us so well. And, they're going to be the people that vouch for us. Although some people joke, those are the people that are not going to vouch for us because they know us too well. They know our warts, they know our blemishes. But nonetheless, strong ties definitely do open up doors. However, if you're working with a bunch of people, you're going to mostly know about the same job opportunities. Your networks are going to overlap in many ways. And so it's sort of a smaller circle of opportunities that you and your network are going to know about in those strong tie worlds. And what was revelatory and really revolutionary about the weak tie research essentially said that weak ties also open up just as many doors as strong ties do. And weak ties are people you don't know particularly well. Maybe you've had one or two touch points from them. Maybe they're somebody that is connected to you through somebody else in your network. And so you just haven't spent a lot of time with them, but they have some sort of positive impression of you and you have a positive rapport with them, but it's not a deep and long, everlasting connection. And those people have many, many more tentacles in any environment, and they're going to know about other jobs and other networks and other opportunities. And so if you can tap into their world and your strong tie world, then you have a lot more ways to unlock referrals and opportunities.
So you give practical examples on the book on how to do this, but if you're an introvert and it's even terrifying for you to walk into, the cocktail party that you're simulating, or even just to email somebody cold on LinkedIn, how do you coach people to get over that?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, introverts and extroverts, nobody likes writing to people cold and asking for things. So let's just all be clear, that is the most vulnerable, uncomfortable, thing that happens. But what I can also say definitively is that people are not thinking about you. And it's not that they're being selfish or mean or anything like that. It's just, how would I know what Genevieve or Jessica need in the world right now? Unless they tell me. And so I think that's one thing to think about. The other is to think, I think a lot of people struggle with well, I don't want to be a charity case. If I, ask somebody for something, then they're going to feel bad for me, or I'm going to look like I'm a mess, or whatever it is. And so I think that there's coaching just around mindset of when somebody refers somebody into an opportunity, that is actually being incredibly helpful to the person who needs that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be asking for it. And similarly, the person who, is asking is sort of putting themselves out there, but people actually want to be helpful, but they really have very busy lives and they don't know how to be helpful.
So Genevieve, tell us more about Urban Arts and your work there.
Yeah, so Urban Arts is an organization that uses the art and science of digital game design as a pathway to college and career. So essentially, you think about a game, right? It has every component you could possibly need, whether that's animation and music, sound development, creative direction, production, coding, computer science, level design, project management, leadership. I mean, it's got literally everything. If you're going to make a game and you're going to do it in a very small group or by yourself, you have to practice all of your executive functioning and skills. So it's a really great way to get teenagers from low income backgrounds is the kids that we work with, gets them hooked, right? I mean, what kid doesn't love games? And so that's a good value proposition for them. But then, it really gives them this very well-rounded skill set. As part of the program, we have a very, very robust free college access service, full suite of services. And so we work with every student on the FAFSA, the Common Application. They apply to at least three college applications, all costs covered by Urban Arts. And we've helped them find a really well-rounded portfolio of scholarships. One of our main goals is getting students to college for as little to no debt as possible. And it's both a national program. We actually work with public school educators across the country. We develop curricula, high school AP computer science, principal preparatory curricula, and now middle school as well. And those curriculum, they are based in game engines. Our high school curriculum is all based in Unity. So thank you, Unity. And so we've got students all over the nation learning computer science and all of those skills I talked about through Unity, and then getting certified through the Unity user exam, and then going on to have fantastic scores and get accepted to colleges and everything. And we have an after school program. I'm here right now. This is Teen Central that I'm streaming out of. And we have about 500 students in our New York City Learning Lab that are in fairly intensive after school programs, all using game design and prepping for college.
Thank you so much. So we learned a lot about how mentors are just a key part of your work there. Can you talk to us about how the mentor program works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we pair students we actually have different tiers of mentorship. We pair students with mentors at 10th. They usually start with us in 10th grade, our high school students. And they might do mentoring with 3 other kids, right? It's a little bit lower key. It's very basic. It's introductory. So the mentors are providing some like wholesale, hey, here's the career. Here's like a 30,000 foot view of the industry and what exists in the industry and what the trends are. And so students in groups of 3 will be able to ask questions and start just turning over those rocks. As they progress through our program, they get paired with a mentor one-on-one for about 8 weeks. And those mentorships, we have 2 types. We have mentorships that are focused more on skills development and portfolio development. So having these technical or artistic mentors really working with the kids on having an incredible pre-professional portfolio that's going to go into their college applications and beyond. We also have mentors that are focused more on the career access and just helping teach kids those basic skills that some of us unfortunately learned in our 30s and wish we had learned in our teens or something. So we kind of scaffold our mentorships like that. And then we have an amazing alumni program. I have the good fortune of running a piece of that. I run a cohort of ambassadors that we call our alumni that we call our alumni ambassadors. And they actually work with me in external relations. And that in and of itself is a mentorship, but I also work to pair those alumni with mentors as well.
Wow, that's so robust. So it's overall career path, real technical skill support, durable kind of soft skills, and then even beyond, it sounds like after graduation, those relationships end up continuing.
Yes. Yeah, they do.
So how do you think about building sort of that long-term perspective? How are you sort of supporting the high schoolers in thinking through this is cultivating a relationship you'll have for potentially your whole life?
So it is our job to help them go from here's how to establish a strong mentoring relationship and understand what a mentor does for you that is different from a sponsor and how you get there. And so that's actually a big piece of my role. So I always say that a mentor can have one, 2, hopefully 3 out of a set of 4 functions for you. So the first one is that they challenge you to think deeper and learn how to creatively problem solve in the moment. They ask you more questions than they tell you things necessarily. What I've noticed is that there are an abundance of people out there that are happy to tell you about their life story. But if you don't have the same socioeconomic background as them, the same privileges in education and weak ties and strong ties, that's not necessarily going to be your story. So instead, a mentor creates a framework by which you can learn how to creatively problem solve and come up with your way of interacting in the world. So they really get you thinking more than they talk. The second thing is that they might give you opportunities to shadow. So a lot of times we don't know what the real world looks like. We might hear about it, but it's an incomplete picture. And if a mentor can bring you with them, have you in a room I do this all the time. I bring students with me when I'm in a meeting with NBC Universal or Unity, and they actually get to hear what it sounds like. They come to board meetings occasionally to understand, okay, actually, this is how people interact. This is how people frame what they need. This is how people have challenging conversations. This is how people ask for things. And so they get to hear that on the job because there's really no other way to learn it. And then they can direct you to active resources. So mentors should be preparing you to operate when they are unavailable. If they are in Timbuktu, then these are the resources that professionals are using all the time, and I know what they are and I know how they operate. So you're empowered to help yourself. And the last one is to help you develop your unique value proposition. And this is something that not every high school senior is going to have because Very few of us are unique, even when we've been trying for 35, 40 years. But it is a really important thing for kids to start thinking about young. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And the key thing is that we help kids understand you're not trying to impress your mentor. You want to show them a spirit of learning and being respectful of their time. They need to know what your weaknesses are, and they need to get the full picture so that they can really steward you toward your sponsorship opportunity. They can become a sponsor. Absolutely. My mentors in the past have become sponsors. But they also help you to have all your ducks in a row so that when you establish those sponsorship opportunities, you're going to put your best foot forward. You're going to know what pitfalls to avoid. And so as our students move into the alumni phase, it's important to me, especially with my ambassador cohort, that they get actual introductions to professionals, that I advocate for them and say, this young person is going to be graduating in the spring. They know these skills. This is a 2-sentence bio about this person. My job as a sponsor is to have that on rinse and repeat. I know how to write, Daquan's 2-sentence bio into a quick email and get it sent. And I know that that person is going to be responsive, communicative, punctual, and show up when they're supposed to, because as a sponsor, I understand their unique value proposition. So I'll just pause there. There are other ways in terms of, a lot of times students think, well, and I think we'll get to this, Jessica, but worrying about how they bring value. And so we can talk more about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great transition. What tips do you both have for getting over the fear of it just being a transactional relationship, asking somebody for something and reframing it as you delivering value?
Yeah. I mean, part of the content that we kind of deliver around this work is to really become like a great conversationalist. A lot of what Genevieve was sort of referencing. We have a slide that says, if it's not genuine and it's transactional and people sort of feel you're just in it for this ask at the end of it, they can snuff that out, and that feels yucky. And that feels yucky to our learners too. They don't want to do that. And that's what makes them feel so uneasy about making asks to begin with. Or in some of the cultures that, we work with, they'll say, well, if you ask for something from somebody, then there's an expectation that you're going to give something back. And, maybe that is like a little bit more of a tit for tat. So some of the ways to overcome that is to become a really great conversationalist. So asking open-ended questions. And I oftentimes will say to our learners, like, you know what people really love? They love talking.
Talking about themselves.
Too. So if you can ask open-ended questions, we have a document with 300 different varieties of questions that you can ask. And, it's amazing to like show this to different audiences across the country, because people will pick the same questions as the ones that they hate. And then the second half of the room will be like, these are the questions we love. Like, we want to ask people about their pets. We want to ask them about their plants. Like, and the other people are like, we hate asking about those questions because they're so superficial and they're so, kind of like not deep. And the other people are like, I don't want anyone to ask me a deep question, So it's also interesting to just like see what people's like proclivities are. But the idea is like getting really well versed in like the art of asking questions. And then what happens after you ask questions? Then you need to follow into a conversation with more curiosity. And there's so many ways to do that. Asking elongated questions, asking clarifying questions, sympathizing, empathizing, mirroring, paraphrasing. There's all these different strategies for getting people to say more and for people to feel like you're empathizing with them. Oh, wow. We had a climber who got a job because like he connected with this person that was the recruiter who also lost his mother from breast cancer in his teenage years. And so did this person that was interviewing. And that concept of like finding similarities is called homophily. And when you find similarities, that also creates a new level of trust. And that can be like, oh, we went to the same school, we live in the same area, we go to the same church, we have had some similar life experiences. And so again, all of these things allow people to not feel so transactional, asking questions, being curious in a conversation, following up, like being engaged as a human, then builds relationships. And then later on, after a little bit, then you can be like, hey, I'm job searching and I know this person and I think that person might have a job opening, and you have to do your research. So this sort of like leads to the Goldilocks ask, which might be a separate topic for us, but this notion that when we ask for something too big or we don't ask at all, those are not good ways to leverage social capital. But once you've built a thoughtful relationship, again, it doesn't have to be deep for years and years and years, but you've had a cool conversation with somebody or two or three, then you do have the right to go ask for something. But if you start asking for the world, which we call the kitchen sink, like that's going to be too much. And what our learners sometimes would do is say, oh, this person wants to be helpful. Great. Can you find me a job? But if I can spend a bunch of time on LinkedIn, find some job opportunities that seem right for me, or some people that could lead me to a job. And then I'm writing to that person and saying like, hey, I see that you know this person or you have this connection or whatever. Can you make an intro? Here's a blurb about me. And that's 5 minutes or less. Then, and that person doesn't have to think, they just have to copy and paste and they know who you want to meet and they have a good impression. They will likely do it because you've done your homework.
I remember you introducing also the concept of homophily, which I had to look up after our conversation, but it really breaks down that your first couple of steps is to engage and find connection, which is what you, again, do in any relationship. And then once you've got that foundation of a connection, making that Goldilocks ask that's neither too big, too small, kind of appropriate for the level of connection you have with that person. So it doesn't come out in the first opportunity, but it transpires over a couple of conversations, it sounds like. Genevieve, what about, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. One thing that many of our students have expressed is hard is, you get to know that person and you get to the point where you have that initial ask and it goes well. And then what? Right? That it's like, but okay, this person's important now and I need to keep this person and this person is willing to be either a mentor or a sponsor of mine. But how do you steward a relationship? And especially when you are job searching for the first time or you're early in your career, you can have this sense of like, what do I bring to this person's day? And so some tips that I've given before, just in terms of, okay, so let's say that there was an ask here and maybe there needs to be one more strategic ask 9 months from now, but what gets you from there to there, A to B, right? And so tips that we've given are, one thing is I have one student who every single month she writes to her mentor and says, I found these interesting articles, not sure if you saw them. Anything you saw this month that I should read? Totally, like, if you're seeing something that is interesting because of a shared interest you've established or because it relates to your industry, info sharing is always something anybody can do at any stage, any level. And then asking for something that does not tap into, doesn't really require that person to like open their network, make a difficult ask of their connections or help you get a job, right? It's have you seen anything I should be consuming? Again, it taps into the person's desire to help in a way that takes nothing from them other than maybe a minute of their time to copy and paste a link. Another one that I've seen that was really helpful is a student saying to their mentor, again, to Nitzan's point, I did my research. I want to be out there more in person meeting people. Here are 2 groups I came across. What do you think? Should I be part of this meetup, this virtual meetup? Should I do? And then the mentor has said to them, no, that one's not helpful. Don't waste your time. But actually what you do need to do is join this one. Let me see if I can get an invite for you. So it ended up bringing more open doors to this student by just asking for advice on something that they were going to intend to do anyway. And then the last one that has been intensely powerful, we've noticed, is when a student learns a hard lesson. They've done something, they've messed up, and then they've gone, okay, what did I learn from that? Or how did I turn it around? Or, okay, how could I do that differently next time? They tell their mentor, right? They reach out and they say, hey, I had an interesting thing happen, in my job in my internship or whatever it is, I want to run it by you. So those moments of vulnerability as well, where again, you're showing proactivity, an intent to learn and improve yourself. I think young people, it is hard to do that because you think, oh no, they're not going to think highly of me. They're going to think highly of you for having the intention to learn how to do it differently next time and to be a part of that process. So those are actually 3 things that I always suggest if someone is struggling with the idea of how to steward meaningful mentoring relationships, even when things feel dry, where you don't have an ask or you don't think it's the right time for an ask. There's these little ways that you can add value. And sometimes in someone's busy life with kids and mortgages and jobs, just hearing the energy of a younger person can make your day. So those are some of the ways that we suggest people steward those relationships.
I love that. So after you've got the homophily to establish the connection, you've made the ask has been fulfilled. And then to continue building this relationship into a deeper relationship, there's these low lifts, like number one, just exchange information or insights. Number two, ask for advice. And number three, share a mistake or a challenge or a problem that you had and get some guidance on where to go next. All really low lifts for the other person, but you're just like putting pennies in that relationship bank.
Right.
I would also jump in and add generosity of feedback from the person who is the job seeker to just, or the graciousness or the gratitude also goes like a very long way. Like, literally the hour before I came onto this webinar, somebody had reached out to me and asked for some career advice. They were sitting in my house, and it was just a full hour of me being like, oh, well, what about this? And you could try this. And like, what about talking to this person? And blah, 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 and it was a fun conversation for me to just be thoughtful with this person that I like, but don't have a deep, long connection with. And, at the end of it, he was like, I really came to the right place. And he made me feel really good about that hour that I spent with him just by being gracious and generous. And that really goes a long way for the person who's being the helper to feel like, oh, I was helpful. Like everyone wants to feel like they've been helpful.
Absolutely. Nitzan, Genevieve, thank you so much. You both were so helpful today. I'm thrilled to share this with all of our current and future readers out there on the Career Game Loop. This practical advice and more is in the book, but also don't forget to check out Climb Together and Climb Higher. Lots of great resources and insights in the work that Nitzan does. And then, of course, Urban Arts and all of the work that Genevieve does. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.